White shirts and ties.
Mine's in the car.
You're welcome. It's quite tired. I'm sorry. He's having trouble with oxygen content, breathing. Oh,
Most likely will.
He, no. Yeah, he's not a computer guy, so.
Ready? Okay, bring the meeting to order, 3:01. Roll call, please.
President Chapman? Vice President Chapman?
Between Salmons and answering to that. Here.
President Wilson?
Here.
Board Member Watson?
Here.
Board Member Reserve? Here. And Board Member McBride? Here.
Any changes or deletions to the agenda?
No changes or deletions.
Item 4, approval of the minutes of March 4th and also February 4th. Board, any corrections or something like that? Move for approval. First. Jim, second. Any discussion?
I need to abstain from February 4th.
So we will vote on them separately. We'll vote on February 4th first. What's that? Why don't we need another?
Could you guys increase the volume of your voices? We have people right behind me that cannot hear what you're, they can hear sound but not your voice.
Okay,
Thank you.
we'll try to, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, then let's, we'll redo that motion. I need a motion separately for February 4th.
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And one abstention. And then March 4th.
Move to approve.
Second. First and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Jared, was there any, no, any correspondence? Would anybody from the public like to address the board on an item that's not already on the agenda? Yep.
I'm Laura Marsters. I have made a few observations in my life. And first one is that if you have a dead horse, it doesn't matter how much you kick it, it's not going to come back to life. And even $21,000 isn't going to bring it back to life. The other observation is that if we as the human race would learn from past experiences, we'd be a much further advanced race than we are. We try to reinvent the wheel every time we do something. And the third thing is, I haven't talked to one person that thinks the Credence is a good site. And that's my observation.
Thank you. Any other? Well,
Hi, Noelle Haller, Riggs Town and Country. You might have already discussed this in a previous meeting. I don't get anything but the agenda notes. But where is the parking going to be if there's any activities at Credence in the event of an event that does happen with swimming? I just don't know that yet. I haven't talked to anybody. I'd just like to know where parking is going to be, if that's already a plan that you've already discussed. Thank you.
It's not. Greg, you want to address that last question?
Yeah, I'll start with the last one. The Credence site was chosen as the preferred site through the analysis for the construction of a new community swimming pool. And the board has done proposals from different design firms that design pools for a living in the whole complex. And so they have selected Aquatic Design Group to be that design firm. And that contract, once we enter into escrow on the property, that contract will go into effect, and they will start doing the preliminary designs, and that will be a very inclusive process with the board, with the community, and in designing a layout that will work for that site. In the original analysis, there was a 3-acre desired site that would allow for room for expansion and sufficient parking. This site has more than 3 acres. It's 4.2 or 4.3, but there's some slopes on the site as well. There are a couple of different design configurations that naturally evolve for that site, and it would be able to accommodate quite a lot of parking on site. And the additional areas that have been identified for a larger event are the high school parking, which is right across the street, and also the Bank of America parking lot is approximately 1 block away from the north end of the site. So that's those two areas are where we would anticipate overflow parking for a really large event.
And
More
Bank of
than
America's on board with that? Or will
we would have to
Warning-
work out an agreement with them on the weekend, but they don't use that
True.
parking lot, and it's normally an insurance issue. And so communities have those types of agreements all the time.
Like an MOU or something like that?
Mhm.
Okay, thank you very much.
And regarding the first question, I think I believe it was in reference to the analysis of the Roosevelt pool site, and so there will be an update on that. The contract with Siegfried Engineering and what they are actually looking at that site and why.
Thank you, Barry. Any other public comment? Okay. And we will move on to item 7A. Mr. Hancock.
Yes, good afternoon. At the prior meeting, we had laid out a timeline that took us through September of this year, laying out all the different steps in this process. And the April 1st meeting, there were some items that we were wanting to move forward with at that meeting. And due to the fact we had some scheduling conflicts and some other items, there was a lot of items going on that day. We had the 150th anniversary of Lassen County, and the county also had some interviews that were going on. We weren't sure if we would have a quorum, and so that meeting was canceled. And so because of that cancellation, we've amended the timeline and made adjustments and pushed most of those dates back about 2 weeks. So that we could actually stick to this timeline. And so the timeline in front of you, there's no action requested, but we just wanted to provide you an updated one based on that modification.
Thank you. Any questions from the board? Hancock? Any questions from the public? item 7B, consider purchase policy and the draft MOU.
Based on the direction received from the board, and the fact that we had city staff serving as the executive officer and as the project manager, there was a desire to use a county staff person to serve in the role of treasurer. And as part of that discussion, it was also desired that we use the county treasury and the assessor's office for processing purchase requests and processing payments and bills and those types of things. At least for the first 2 years and essentially through the construction phase, and then the nature of the JPA will change significantly at that point once it goes into an operating mode versus a construction mode. And so the board may at that point decide to open up their own accounts or things like that. There are other alternatives there. And so what we have been doing based on that direction is working with county staff to come up with, what type of arrangement would work for them and that they would be comfortable with. And so there are really two components to this. We have taken, the first item is the purchasing policy. And so we have taken the county's purchasing policy that they have in place today, and we have made modifications, very minor modifications, just to the different titles in the position. So rather than certain items over $10,000 going to the Board of Supervisors, it would go to the JPA Board for approval. And items that would normally go to the county Chief Executive Officer, they would go to the Executive Officer of the JPA for approval. And so that's the first item, is that purchasing policy. And this was shared with you at the last meeting we had. And the board seemed to be comfortable with those dollar amounts and those types of things. What the assessor has asked is that we enter into an MOU with the county to memorialize the actual relationship that's going to be there.
Auditor.
The auditor, sorry.
You're going to change the assessor and that we want. You got that?
It is. Thank you.
There's a big difference.
There is. The auditor, and so we worked out the what that agreement would look like, and basically it's a fairly short agreement and it's attached here, but essentially it would treat the JPA as another county department. So if we wanted to make a purchase that required a purchase order based on our purchasing policy, we would submit a request to the county. They would get back to us with a purchase order number. We would then make that purchase, attach the documentation behind that, and send that back over for payment. It would be the same thing with reimbursements and other things. They would be prepared and sent over to the county. They would also provide a contract tracking. So when we approve a contract, we would send over the contract to them. They would create that contract and the amount. Then we would obtain the I-9 from the company that we were working with, and as the invoices would come in, we would sign them, approve them, send them over with the supporting documentation of the board approval for them to process through that office. And this agreement basically has us following all of the county policies, and one of the advantages that they've expressed for that is the ability that they would then be able to have available audit-ready documents that would save hopefully some time and energy through the audit process. This same agreement was presented to the Board of Supervisors today, and so they have reviewed it. agreement itself, you know, the language in there, I think is fairly specific, and so the discussion really today is, does the board still wish to utilize the county for that payment process? And if so, then we would move forward with this agreement.
Jared? Turn it over to the board. Any questions for Mr. Hancock on either the purchasing policy or the MOU? Anybody from the audience have any questions or comments on either of those items? Okay.
We accept the purchase policy and we approve the,
Okay, I have a first
Second.
and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Mr. Hancock, if we could address item 7B before 7C.
Sure. The item 7B is related to I believe it is. Through the formation of the JPA with the city and the county, and also the appointment of a public member, we are operating under the guidelines for that, for the governing authority that was outlined in the JPA agreement, which is quite broad. And we had, some time ago, we had a member of the public make a request that we get a legal opinion on whether or not the JPA has the authority to spend funds to look at, well, two things. Do we have the authority under the JPA to look at the Roosevelt Pool site? And the second component is to expend funds to do that analysis. Based on the direction from the board, we were going to obtain a legal opinion on that from an attorney, and our desire was to have the county council provide that legal opinion. And so I've been working with the county CEO on that process, and there were really two components to it. The first component was the county council, willing and able to provide the legal opinion? And then the second component is actually receiving the legal opinion. And so in my conversations with the CEO, we still haven't received confirmation yet on whether or not the county council can or is willing to provide that legal opinion. But we believe that once that's determined, that it would be fairly easy to have the opinion drafted. And so I'm not sure if there's been any changes to that.
I did get the green light to go ahead and get that opinion. Seems like it'll be very simple.
Okay. So at this point, we have we're hopeful that we'll be able to get the opinion in the next couple of weeks from the county council on that, and there won't be any conflict in them preparing that on our behalf. And is this the incoming or the outgoing?
This will actually be a special counsel.
And so we hope to be able to provide that legal opinion by the next meeting, do you think?
Sure. I hope by the end of the week.
Oh, perfect. So once that's made available, we'll get it over to the board and present it publicly at the next meeting.
Thank you, Jerry. Okay, we'll go to the audience. Go ahead.
I have a question. If you have already decided on the site, why are you looking into the Roosevelt site? continually.
When we started this process, we started on a two-track process where we would not only put to bed the Roosevelt site and make sure that it actually was dead, as you put it earlier. That although a lot of people believe that it's dead, there are a lot of other people that believe the opposite, that it could be saved. And so we wanted to make sure before we tear down a building that already has a pool, that we actually should be tearing down that building, because 10 years ago when that pool was closed, there was never a dollar amount that was put on it as far as here's how much it would cost to fix that facility and bring it back up to be able to be used. At the same time, we were also looking at in the unlikely event that the pool could be saved, or could be saved, then we wanted to make sure that we were moving down the road of finding another site to build a pool. And that site could have been there at the Roosevelt site, or it could be at another place, and that's how we got to Credence. And so we still are on that parallel path, and hopefully soon we'll be able to put that question to rest as far as can it be saved or not. Unfortunately, it costs money to get that answer. Anybody else from the audience wish to address the legal opinion question? Okay, bring it back to the board then. Any questions or comments on that one? Jared, I just have one question, and maybe it's not a question, it's more of a clarification. As far as how did we find ourselves in this position where we were even asking for a legal opinion? Because I think that came from outward, not from us. And I think that the board has been pretty adamant that we have the authority to move forward.
Yeah, both, I've talked with the county CEO as well, and we've both read the original agreement. We've also, looked back, I've looked back at the minutes and from the county meetings and the city meetings and what the original intent was and the objective. And it's our opinion that that there was very broad authority given to the JPA to create, operate, and run a community swimming pool for this community. And so, that could include looking at one site, or that could include looking at 50 sites, and we chose to look at 19. And so we have, it's our belief, and the feedback from the board too, is that there's clear authority to do that. However, I'm not an attorney, and the CEO's not an attorney, and so we didn't have the ability to draft a legal opinion and put our attorney seal on there. And so this was something that came up from a member of the public who insisted that we have a legal opinion drafted for that, and so we agreed to do that, and so we're still following down that path.
I address it to only as well for transparency.
Okay, any other comments from the board or the public on that item?
Well, I think, Mr. Chairman, Mr. President, the record should reflect that Councilman Calgary, in the debate that the city had leading up to the allocation of the funds to the JPA, one of the big issues that he was convinced was, even though it was contrary to what his statement had been 4 or 5 years earlier, that he felt that the old pool could be rehabilitated. So he was opposed to the city going into a JPA to build a new pool, and the old pool should be fixed up. And obviously, Councilman Calgary does speak for a number of folks in the community, and there are a percentage of folks who have that opinion, whether it's based on fact or whatever. The city, even though they closed the pool based on recommendations from their insurance folks and others, never quantified the extent of, those of us who've been around there, I would be really surprised that the pool could be resurrected, but there's never been an official autopsy done on the building to be able to determine whether the building is a dead horse or not. And so in order to satisfy the critics of the JPA being formed to build a new pool, we have to dispose of that question once and for all, because the last thing any of us signed on to would be to go out and spend $1, $2, $3, how many millions of dollars of building a new pool, only to find out that had we spent half that amount of money, we could have made the old pool more than viable in terms of the community's use. And that was at the heart of the question or the challenge made by Councilman Caligari in particular at the meetings at the council as well as the joint meetings. So this board, when it formed, I think, with the commitment of resolving all those issues. And unfortunately, in order to do that, we have to have the money spent to do the so-called autopsy. Now, Mr. Jonas, early on in our meetings, he's the public person, questioned the viability of the board using the funds that it receives, i.e. from the county or the city, in that fashion. And that's where the legal opinion was derived from. And if that may be the case, it goes against the fact that, one of the partners to the JPA, in this case the city, had members of that governing body wanting to see that question resolved. So either we do or we don't, we'll find out from the attorney, but the reality is I'm not interested in going out and spending 1, 2, 3, how many millions of dollars building a new pool, and only to have it come back later that if we would have spent a third or a half of that money, we could have made the former pool, the old pool, viable. And this Siegfried firm with the RFP, these guys specialize apparently in taking pools from the 30s and the 40s and doing just that. So it'll be interesting to see. I'm going to be intrigued to see. In fact, I'm going to be anxious to see just what they come back. They'll say, yeah, it can be done. It will cost you $10 million, or it can be done. It will cost you $1.5 million, or it can't be done at all, regardless of what the cost. That's ultimately what we're looking for. So hopefully we can get that process. But the other thing this board committed is we're tired of the delays. So rather than waiting for one question to be resolved before we start working on the other, this dual track, as you had indicated, Mr. President, was established. And the idea being is, let's get the autopsy done, let's get the report and make a determination, hopefully as soon as possible, about the old facility. And if indeed it's a dead horse, it's a dead horse, and hopefully we can lay that question to rest throughout the community, and we can focus our energy in getting a new pool built. If it's not, and it's feasible to renovate the old pool, then that's going to have to be a community debate that the community is going to have to resolve before this board can go in either direction. Maybe we can do it for cheaper, but is it going to give us what we want for the community's needs for the long term? And that's going to be a whole other discussion if we ever get to that point.
Along with that, in addition to Councilmember Caligari, Mayor DeBoer in those discussions also asked that be evaluated as part of it, and Board Member Pyle
Yeah, we had
was
two members
also
of the
very
Board of Supervisors
adamant.
had the same opinion. So
I think that's a perfect segue into 7C.
Very good. So item 7C is giving you an update on the Siegfried Engineering Company and their contract. And so we have some new people in the audience, and so I'll give just a tiny bit of background. But as part of this process, the JPA was formed on the concept of using taxpayer dollars from the city and the county to construct, fund, and operate a community swimming pool. And it was to meet the minimum needs of the community. But the board has also felt the need to, look into the future and what the future needs are as well. And so the minimum needs that were discussed were that this facility would at a minimum be an outdoor seasonal swimming pool, community swimming pool. But as we go through the design phase, we're going to want to make sure that we're designing it for the future. And if additional funds become available to add either additional features or to expand the site or to enclose the site, that we have that design available so that if we, 5 years from now, the resources are available to put a cover over it, that it was designed to be able to do that easily rather than having to make major modifications. And so looking at, anything from a seasonal outdoor pool to a year-round enclosed facility, we wanted to make sure that the cost estimates we were getting on the Roosevelt site would allow us to have apples-to-apples comparisons. And So this firm does have quite a bit of experience in this and in older structures. The task sheet was very detailed in that they are looking at all of the requirements that need to be met in order to open a community swimming pool. That's all of the permitting, all the government agencies that need to be involved. It includes the drainage system, the filtration systems, it includes the HVAC systems, ADA accessibility, the glazing, which is the windows, and all of these different components. And they are going to be providing us with cost estimates for 3 different scenarios. The first scenario would be taking the existing site with the enclosed square footage and bringing it up to the current requirements